Well, she's making a run for the Senate seat currently held by Barbara Boxer in California. But that's nothing compared to what she says, and that is going through chemotherapy. So what does former McCain-Palin campaign advisor think about the health care legislation being voted on today by Congress? Carly Fiorina joins us from D.C. this morning. Good morning, Carly.
Good morning, Allison. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Let's talk about the burning issue on Capitol Hill this morning. That, of course, is health care reform. You are uniquely qualified to talk about this, having just gone through your own breast cancer struggle. Are you for health care reform or not?
I am for health care reform. I am absolutely adamantly opposed to the health care bill, both the House and the Senate version, and that's because neither one of these bills solves the fundamental problems without creating huge new problems. And if I may just take a moment and tell my own story, because it's so relevant to these new guidelines that have come out. I discovered my own lump 2 weeks after a clear mammogram. Had I not been trained in self-examination, had I followed these new guidelines and not had a mammogram for another 2 years, I would probably be dead, because although I caught my cancer early, it was a very aggressive form. I think these new guidelines for women are terrible, and what I find really terrifying, honestly, is this task force, which will become part of the House bill, is filled with people. We don't know who they are. They're not particularly qualified on the subject of cancer. There was not an oncologist or a radiologist on this panel, but their job is to determine what will be covered by these new health care proposals, and they are specifically asked to consider not just the science, but also the cost of treatment. I think this is the beginning glimpse of what ration care will look like. We should be focused in health care reform on quality care for patients, leaving the decisions for patient care between their doctor and themselves. And I think this new recommendation is an incredible disservice to women. I would say to every woman out there, please do your self-exams and please get regular mammograms. It saved my life.
And yet, Carly, your own personal story is instructive in that a mammogram failed you.
Well, no test is foolproof, and that is why we cannot have legislation that limits the number of tests. We need to allow doctors to do every test they deem necessary to determine the cause of someone's illness and the appropriate treatment. No test is foolproof. But the reality is, if you go through a regimen of testing, indeed, they found my cancer, they found what the issue was, and they could prescribe treatment. Had those multiple tests been curtailed, and there has been conversation about the fact that doctors who perform too many tests won't get reimbursed. Frankly, it took a lot of MRIs to make sure my doctors knew exactly what was going on. All of these things are about cost, not about the quality of patient care. We have to be focused on giving every patient the best quality care that our science can provide.
All of this is such a heated debate right now. Is Harry Reid going to get the 60 votes today that he needs?
Well, you know, if I had to bet, I would bet yes. And then, of course, the discussions will ensue. But you know what I find remarkable, in addition to all the problems we've just been talking about with regard to women and breast cancer, one of the most curable cancers there is, the cure rate is now 95%, but also one of the most common cancers there is. In addition to all these issues we've just been talking about, the Senate bill does not lower the cost of health care. In fact, there have been many studies now, CBO in particular, that says, you know what, we're not bending the cost curve on health care. I'm a business person. If someone came to me and presented me with a business case that front-loaded all the revenue and back-loaded all the costs, I would say, go out and redo the numbers. Those numbers don't add, but that's exactly what this Senate bill does.
And Carly,
the numbers are a farce.
You're a successful businesswoman, and now for some reason you want to get into the public service racket. We'll talk about that, and we need to talk about Sarah Palin also when we come back. So stick around, Carly, and thanks for sharing your personal story.